Every time I get stuck behind a brand new truck with chrome all over it, leather everywhere, a grill big enough to frighten wildlife, and a payment schedule hiding inside it that would make a mortgage broker sit down quietly, I think the same thing. The man driving that truck is probably not rich. And that is the part people do not understand. They see the vehicle and assume the income. They see the shine and assume the balance sheet. They see the badge and assume success. Most of the time, what they are really seeing is financing. That is the trap nobody talks about honestly enough. America has built an entire system whose job is to make expensive vehicles feel affordable in monthly terms, even when they are deeply unaffordable in lifetime terms. And once you understand that system, a whole lot of modern behavior suddenly makes sense. Why your neighbor can afford a $70,000 pickup while still complaining about grocery prices. Why a family with regular jobs can somehow keep two giant SUVs in the driveway and still tell you they are doing fine. Why people who should be building wealth are instead volunteering to become the payroll department for a depreciating asset. Most people think the mystery is, how are they affording it? That is the wrong question. The better question is, what definition of afford have they quietly accepted? Because in modern America, afford no longer means buy without wrecking your future. It often means can survive the monthly payment this month. Those are not the same thing, and confusing them is one of the most expensive mistakes ordinary people make. Now, let me begin with the number that matters. Because if you do not start with a number, the rest of the conversation turns into social theory. The average monthly payment for a new vehicle is now in the mid-$700s. Experian S2025 data put the average new car payment around $748 to $767, depending on the quarter and source framing. The average used car payment is still above $530. The average new car loan term is almost 69 months, not 36 months, not 48, nearly 6 years on average. And plenty of buyers are stretching even further than that. Faysite Fayturn 814,782 search, 0 Fayturn 814,782 search, 16 Fayturn 814,782 search, 12 Fay. That is where I want you to pause, because people hear those numbers and still do not feel the violence in them. $750 is not a transportation detail. It is a lifestyle architecture. It is a recurring claim on your future. It is a rent competitor. It is a retirement inhibitor. It is an opportunity cost machine. And once you move into trucks and large SUVs, the situation gets worse, not better. It is easy to find situations where the payment blows through $900, and not rare to see numbers above $1,200 once. Term stretching, taxes, fees, and options have all been poured together. Now, if wages had risen in a way that made all of this sensible, that would be one conversation. But that is not what happened. What happened is something much more dangerous. The financing system changed faster than household judgment did. That is the real story. The first weapon in the trap is loan length. When people my age were young, a car loan felt like a short-term commitment, 3 years, 4 years if you were pushing it. You knew that if the payment was too high, the deal was too high. That framework protected a lot of people from their own enthusiasm. Now the protection is gone. Stretch the loan to 6 years, then 7, then 8. Some lenders have even flirted with 10-year auto loans, which should be enough by itself to make anyone with a functioning financial pulse step away from the desk. But that is not what most people do. They look at what the longer term does to the monthly number, and they feel relief. That relief is one of the most expensive feelings in consumer finance, because the monthly number falls. And when the monthly number falls, the vehicle suddenly feels possible. The problem is possibility was purchased with time, interest, and future fragility. People say, great, I got the payment down. What they should be saying is, I just agreed to make this thing part of my life for the next 7 or 8 years. And in a rapidly depreciating asset, that is a terrible bargain. You can make almost anything look affordable if you are willing to spread the pain across enough months. That does not make the thing affordable. It only anesthetizes the buyer. Now let us make it concrete. Suppose a man buys a truck for $55,000. He takes a 7-year loan at a rate that feels not too bad because he is focused on the payment and because the dealer has become an expert in presenting financing like a form of emotional massage. The payment lands around $800 a month. $800 does not feel absurd to him because the truck itself feels grand, it feels powerful, it feels like something successful people drive, it feels like reward, it feels like adulthood in metallic paint. But if you stretch the picture out across the full life of the deal, the truck becomes something else. The payment over years, the insurance over years, the fuel over years, the repairs over years, The maintenance over years, the registration, the tires, the brakes, the little, not a big deal, costs that always arrive wearing small clothes and leave carrying your wallet. Suddenly the truck is not an $800 payment. It is a six-figure relationship. That is the part people avoid calculating because calculation breaks the spell. And spells are what dealerships sell. Let us take the non-payment expenses for a second because this is where reality starts biting the ankles of the fantasy. Full coverage car insurance in the U.S. now averages roughly $2,434 per year, according to Forbes, or about $203 a month. While Bankrate 2026 estimate is even higher at about $225 a month. Pickup truck insurance alone averages about $2,297 a year in Forbes analysis. And if you are filling a large truck in late April 2026, the national AAA average for regular gas is around $4.11 a gallon. Faysite Fayturn 814,782 search 2, Fayturn 814,782 search 6, Fayturn 814,782 search 14, Fayturn 814,782 search 7, Fay. That means the man with the $800 payment is not really living with an $800 burden. He is living with a transportation ecosystem, insurance, fuel, maintenance, depreciation, and in the truck world, the fuel bill alone can start feeling like a second insult stapled to the first one. Now, here is where people get in real trouble. The vehicle depreciates faster than the debt disappears. That is the second weapon in the trap. The buyer drives off the lot and the value starts falling immediately. Meanwhile, the long loan amortizes slowly, especially in the early years, especially if the rate is not trivial, especially if there were taxes and extras rolled into the note. That creates negative equity. The car is worth less than what is owed. This is not some rare tragedy. It is a built-in feature of how the system now works, and once someone is upside down, they become easier to control, because when they get tired of the vehicle or want something newer or need something else, they do not come to the next deal from freedom. They come from a hole. So the dealer does something very American. He solves one pain by packaging it inside a bigger future pain. The old negative equity gets rolled into the new loan. The buyer feels rescued. He was not rescued. He was refinanced into a new identity. That is one of the darkest little tricks in consumer finance. People think they are trading vehicles. Often they are just moving debt from one costume to another. And because the new truck or SUV is nicer, the emotional brain experiences the entire transaction as improvement. Improvement, that word has buried more households than recession ever did. Now let us move away from the mechanics for a moment and go into the thing that really drives the entire machine. Identity. Cars are no longer sold as transportation in America. They are sold as personality extensions. The truck is not just a truck. It is masculinity. It is competence. It is self-respect. It is ruggedness for people who mostly drive to chain restaurants and school pickup lanes. The luxury SUV is not just a family hauler. It is care. It is success. It is protection. It is proof that your family deserves the best, even if the best quietly means financing your own future stress. This is why normal people make bizarre financial sacrifices for vehicles that do not make economic sense. They are not buying transportation. They are buying a story about themselves. And stories are much harder to argue with than spreadsheets. If I show a man the opportunity cost of his truck payment, he may hear judgment. If I show him the retirement account that money could have built, he may hear abstraction. But if I tell him his truck is eating the life he wants later, then perhaps the story starts to get clearer, because that is the real cost, not just the interest, the life delay. Take that $800 monthly payment and imagine it invested instead at 8% over 7 years. That is not just a pile of used dollars. It is real capital, real optionality, real breathing room. And if you include the insurance and fuel difference between something excessive and something merely reliable, the comparison gets uglier. This is what people do not understand about cars. The damage is not only what you pay, it is what you can no longer build. That is why I say a big car payment is rarely just a transportation choice. It is a wealth decision, usually a very bad one. And before anyone tells me reliability matters, of course it does. I am not arguing for false thrift. I am not suggesting people should commute in broken junk or gamble their safety for a spreadsheet win. Reliable transportation is not a luxury, it is infrastructure, but the gap between reliable and status-driven is enormous. And most households spend in that gap as if it were morally necessary. It is not necessary, it is emotional. And emotional recurring expenses are among the greatest destroyers of future wealth because they get normalized faster than one-time mistakes do. People will fight you if you question their truck. They will not notice what the truck quietly cost them until years later. That is the saddest part. They think the pain is the payment. The payment is only the visible pain. The invisible pain is what got crowded out, the retirement contributions not made, the emergency fund that never thickened, the flexibility that never arrived, the ability to say no to a bad job that never formed, the chance to buy a small rental, the chance to take 6 months and build a business, the chance to live with less fear. That is what the truck really buys against. Now let me say something even harsher. Many people are not actually affording these vehicles. They are reorganizing their lives around them. Smaller apartments, longer time with roommates, skipped vacations, side hustles, not for wealth, but for maintenance of image. Credit cards carrying the repair bill, retirement accounts rated for down payments or emergencies created by the thing that was supposed to signal success. That is not affording. That is servitude with Bluetooth. And because the whole culture nods along, because the dealership talks in monthly payment language, because social media photographs the car and never photographs the amortization table, the trap starts to feel normal. Normal is one of the most dangerous words in money. A normal mistake repeated by millions is still a mistake. Now, there is one more piece people underestimate, and it is the emotional captivity that happens after the purchase. Once someone commits to the giant payment, they become defensive. The car is no longer just a product. It becomes part of their self-explanation. So if you question the cost, they hear an attack on who they are. That is why logic bounces off so many people in this area. They are no longer arguing for a vehicle. They are arguing for the story that justified the vehicle. And stories once fused with ego are much more durable than math. The only antidote I know is to step back and ask one brutal question. If nobody could see what you drove, what would you buy? That question strips the entire thing down to utility. Would you still choose the same truck if it came in invisible paint? Would you still choose the same SUV if your neighbors, coworkers, relatives, and old classmates never got to see it? If the answer changes, then you have learned something very important. You were not buying transportation, you were buying visibility. And visibility financed over 7 years is usually one of the worst investments a family can make. That is why I prefer a different way to think. Transportation should support your life. It should not become the central financial event of your life. A car should get you from point A to point B safely, reliably, and with as little theft from your future as possible. That is what a car is for. It is not supposed to be your proof of worth, not your portable status statement, not your monthly reminder that America knows exactly how to weaponize aspiration against the middle class. So yes, the people driving those giant, shiny trucks may make less than you. They are not performing a miracle. They are participating in a system of longer terms. Softer definitions of afford emotional manipulation, negative equity rollovers, and total cost blindness. Once you see that, the mystery disappears. And then something interesting happens. The old reliable car in your driveway starts to look less like a compromise and more like a strategic asset. It may not get admiring glances. It may not signal rugged greatness to strangers at red lights, but it may be quietly funding your future. And that, in my opinion, is far more impressive than any truck that needs a 7-year loan and a second job just to remain flattering.